Hey everyone, it's Rich Oliver at the Mystery School. I'm sitting here with my wife Karen again. We have a little thing going on called Chronicles with Rich Oliver, my story before I forget it since I'm getting old. And Karen has been helping me remember this and get it down on video so that maybe we write about it someday, or I could just at least remember it. And so she's going to ask me questions. I'm not quite sure how they're going to come to me, so I'll try to give you the best answer I can. So what's your first question, dear?
Okay, so last episode we learned about how Rich received his first dirt bike and how he got into that. So now I think the next step would be to ask how you got into road racing from being a mini bike rider when you were 11, and what took you through the progression to actually become a road racer?
Well, that's a good question. It's a little involved, so I'll tell you the whole story. So when I was in high school, I went to Pacific Grove High. Pacific Grove High had a guy there that also raced. His name is Ricky Graham, one of the greatest dirt trackers in the world. And Ricky was a senior, and I was a freshman at Pacific Grove High. And so he would talk about his racing a little bit and all that stuff. He was kind of coming on strong at that point in his career. I hadn't even started racing, so I got involved in it because he was racing, and I was like, hey, I want to be a road racer. And he laughed. He's like, yeah, right, buddy. You know, I'm just some guy in high school he's talking to. But it ended up working out, and what I did is I got a job at Kawasaki of Monterey. Kawasaki of Monterey was our local bike shop, and they were down just past Cannery Road, down there on the Del Monte Avenue. And they hired me as a lot boy, so I pushed the bikes in after the business closed at the end of the day. I cleaned the bikes, I'd empty the trash, clean the bathrooms, a whole bit. And it was a great job. And then I got my first street bike, and instead of buying a Kawasaki, I bought a Yamaha RD400, which went over not so great at the Kawasaki shop. But I'm like, man, that's like the best bike at the time. I gotta have that.
So we like blue.
We like blue, you know, I mean, and this is well before Yamaha supported us and all that stuff. It's not, you know, I had nothing against the Kawasaki shop. They were great people. In fact, that place was owned by a guy named John Schuler and Eddie Holder. Eddie Holder was a SCCA sports car racer. Great guys. They helped me with my career. So anyway, I got this Yamaha RD400, and I'm bombing around the Monterey Peninsula, riding it way too fast and doing wheelies past the high school, and don't do this at home. All the hooligan stuff that you would do on a two-stroke like that. And my boss, Eddie Holder, went riding with us one day, me and his little gang. We had a little street bike gang. And he says, you're gonna kill yourself. You gotta get off the street, dude. And I'm like, well, how do you do that? He goes, well, we'll help you go road racing with a Kawasaki KZ650 in the box stock class. And so that's actually how I got started racing. I started on a Yamaha on the street, and then the Kawasaki shop wanted to sponsor me. So I was actually sponsored rider in my first ever race with the AFM at Sears Point, or now Sonoma Raceway. And that's how I got going.
Okay, so you are how old at this point?
15 and a half, 16.
So
right.
How did you get to go road racing?
Well, my dad was involved in that, so yeah, I had to talk to my parents right at that. Now, I've got them convinced I can ride motorcycles. I even got a street bike license and a street bike. And of course, my parents didn't see me doing wheelies all around town, I'll tell you that. But I was able to convince them to let me go road racing because it was, going to be safer out there on the track. And of course it was, but it required my dad to get up early in the morning and drive up to Sonoma Raceway with us from Monterey, Pacific Grove where we lived, and he had to sign me in because I was a minor. So without my dad, getting up early and coming with me, that wouldn't have happened either.
Mm-hmm. So what was that first experience like?
I crashed and broke my collarbone. Yeah.
Good.
I didn't know anything what I was doing, I hadn't had much practice on the track. I think I went to one track day before. It was like a test day you could go up and ride. I had no clue what I was doing, and I crashed in the S's and slid out. I guess that would be like, turn 9 or whatever, somewhere out in there. And I got up and my arm went, and I still have the lump right here from the collarbone when I first was racing. So I was 16 years old, broke my collarbone. We got up, fixed the bike, and we went back out, and I had a few more crashes that first year, but I successfully made it through my novice year, and then moved on with my AFM career.
Well, I think that's a good place that you started your racing career, because I believe at this point you still hold the track record for your classic motorcycle.
Yeah,
At
at Sonoma, they.
Sears Point and Finian.
Yeah, whatever you want to call it.
Wherever.
I mean, I'm probably calling it the wrong name, so I apologize. But yes, I that's the only track I knew at first, and I was like, this is like all tracks. And when I first went out there, I was like, man, this track's pretty bumpy, and there's a lot of roads that I rode on in the Monterey Peninsula that were a lot smoother. And I'm like, man, I don't know about this road racing. I mean, it's kind of like rough. There's patches in the track and stuff, and so I was a little bit, I wouldn't say disappointed with the surface, but I was like, wow, this is a little different. But over time, I got to like it. At first, I was not very competitive. I just liked the speed aspect of it. And so when it came to competition and passing people and racing and all that stuff, I was like, nah, I don't really care about that. But, I was young, and I wasn't as driven as I was later to, try to win and stuff. So it was a good experience, though, to begin with up there. And then I went to Willow Springs, and then I went to Riverside, and then I went to Ontario, and then my eyes opened. I'm like, oh, there are other styles of tracks than just Sonoma Raceway. So maybe we'll talk about that in another episode, but it was, that's where I started, and that's how I got started racing.
That's cool. All right, so at the tail end of our last episode that we put out there, we had asked if you have any questions to let us know, and one question that came up is, what is one of your most moments of panic in the pits and or on the track?
I think, panic in the pits, I think, was the question, and I think that's an interesting question. And I think what I take from that question, hopefully I'm understanding it correctly, is they're calling for your race and your bike's in a million pieces because you just crashed it or whatever, and you're frantically trying to run around and get it ready so you can race. Well, I thought about that for a couple of days, since it's been a while since we got that question, and my answer, probably one of the worst ones, was when I was young. I was racing Superbike, and I was at Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, where I had driven from Monterey out there. I was probably still maybe 20 years old or less. And I had one Superbike, and I had one set of wheels. And of course, back east, I didn't understand, coming from California, where supposedly, it's nice weather all the time. Well, you go back east in the summertime even, you get a thunderstorm, whatever, it's wet, it dries up like that, and the track's dry. California, you get a thunderstorm or you get rain, and it stays on the ground for a while because it's not as, it doesn't cycle through as fast as it does back east. So I'm at Elkhart Lake, and they're calling for the Superbike race, and I had changed my tires to rain tires because about an hour before that it had been raining. Well, I didn't have any spare wheels, so I got the wheels at the tire changing place, and they're frantically trying to change everybody's tires, because back in that era, a lot of people didn't even have a spare set of wheels. And so I ended up getting my slicks put on and missed the race. And I drove there, and I basically drove back with no race after all that. I missed the whole race. And so you talk about panic. I mean, that's like when you're so disappointed. You made it all the way through till Sunday. You're trying to race. You can't race because you didn't guess the weather right, and you don't have enough wheels. And I guess the moral of that story is, over time, doing that more than once and having difficulty, I started to build up a spares kit of things that I needed. And, it ended up making me a lot more prepared for all the eventualities later. But I sure suffered on that trip, and I never will forget, watching my tire in line going through and hoping it gets changed in time, and then it didn't. And, it's not their fault, it's your fault. You don't have a spare set of wheels. So that was my worst, probably, panic in the pits.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
that's sad.
It was kind of sad. It's a lot of wasted fuel to get out there.
That's good. Okay, so then the other one would be, prior to a race, did you have any panic moments?
I would have a dream.
I had a dream.
I had a dream. My dream was not good. So I would wake up in the middle of the night before the race, and this is not later in my career, but when I was starting out, and I would have this dream where I'm trying to find either my helmet or my boots or my earplugs or whatever it was that I needed to get my racing kit on so I could go race. And in the dream, they're calling first call, 250 Grand Prix, or whatever it was, class that I was racing. And in my dream, one of my boots is gone. And I'm frantically running around the pits in who's got my boot? Someone stole my boot. I need my boot, right? Or I couldn't find it. So I was like, second call, we're about ready to start the race. And it was like a panic dream of not being prepared, right? So it kind of ties in with the Elkhart Lake wheel thing.
Well, it does. It ties into what I experienced when I traveled with you. Is like an hour before your event, in our trailer, the helmet was laid out. We had a clear shield, we had a dark shield, we had the orange shield.
Yeah, high definition, right.
And then we had your set of boots, we had your gloves, we had your socks. And everything was laid out perfectly on your bench. Then you went and you had your AST Sports Strength that we made. And then you went back and you changed and you went through your whole eye exercises, stretching and everything before the race. So you did have a routine, but I would say that the panic that you experienced from your dream, you still had all your equipment out before you even started the rest of your preparation.
Right. Well, that's, you become prepared, you become organized, and you have spare stuff, right? And I used to always analyze my racing team when I ran my own team, and it was 250 Grand Prix. I had spare bike, I had spare leathers, I had spare everything. And I'm like, okay, literally, I can probably crash 5 times and destroy everything and still make the main event. And that's where I was happy. I had a lot of spare parts at that point.
No more driving away from home.
Yeah, no more driving all the way back from Wisconsin with no
race.
No race. So. But yeah, so keep those questions coming.
Yes.
I mean, it's really helping me remember things, and I really want to get this stuff out before I forget it completely. And so Karen and I, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us in our shop here at ROMS, and we hope to talk again.
Yep, and my panic at the moment is, can I go find some toilet paper at the store? So
yeah, so we're on our way to the store. All right, guys, take care. Thanks so much.
Healthy.